I think one of the biggest mistakes that people make is they mistake attention for authority. They're out there trying to make content. They're all trying to just get featured different places, and they don't stop to think about the fact that authority is really something that's a strategy. It's a blueprint. And so you can go out and you can get attention, but nobody remembers what you did on social media last week. And so when you create a blueprint, you really actually find what you want to do that's going to build your authority. It makes a huge difference. And most people don't figure that out until they've spent a lot of time and a lot of money, and they're starting over and over. And so I think one of the biggest mistakes is that they don't realize the power of authority, and they mistake that for just simple attention and visibility.
Well,
if you're a real estate investor and are wondering how to raise and leverage private money to make more profit on every deal, then you're in the right place. On Raising Private Money, we'll speak with new and seasoned investors to dissect their deals and extract the best tips and strategies to help you get the money, because the money comes first. Now here's your host, Jay Conner.
you ever wonder how the biggest names in business blow up their brands? I'm talking like Tony Robbins and Robert Kiyosaki or Harv Eker. They don't just get lucky. You see, somebody is behind the scenes pulling the levers. And today, guess what? We're talking to that guy. His name is George Wright III, and he's built multiple multi-million dollar businesses. And he's launched $100 million brands and worked with some of the biggest names in personal development and business on the planet. Now, we're talking about a guy who turned marketing into an art, networking into an asset, and now spends his time showing entrepreneurs how to do the exact same thing. And here's the kicker. He's not going to give you fluff in this episode. You're going to hear real principles, real strategy, and exactly how he built massive results from scratch again and again and again. Now, if you're an entrepreneur, a marketer, or someone who just wants to stop playing small, this conversation is going to change how you think about success. Welcome to the Raising Private Money Show, the only podcast for real estate investors who want to fund their deals without relying on banks or credit or using their own cash. I'm Jay Conner, the Private Money Authority, and I'll show you how to get private lenders begging to fund your next deal, because every good deal starts with the money. In just a moment, you're going to meet my friend George Wright right after this. Oh, my lands, George, welcome to the show.
It's good to see you, Jay. I was looking forward to this, man. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. I loved being on your show and inviting me to come along and talk about private money and all that kind of good stuff on your show. And now I get the blessing of having you here to talk about authority marketing and brand awareness and blowing up your brand. I mean, George, you have helped literally blow up some of the biggest brands in the world. And so my first question is, what is the biggest mistake or one of the biggest mistakes most entrepreneurs make when they're trying to build authority and they've really never done it before?
Well, I think one of the biggest mistakes that people make is they mistake attention for authority. They're out there trying to make content. They're all trying to just get featured different places, and they don't stop to think about the fact that authority is really something that's a strategy. It's a blueprint. And so you can go out and you can get attention, but nobody remembers what you did on social media last week. And so when you create a blueprint, you really actually find what you want to do that's going to build your authority. It makes a huge difference. And most people don't figure that out until they've spent a lot of time and a lot of money, and they're starting over and over. And so I think one of the biggest mistakes is that they don't realize the power of authority, and they mistake that for just simple attention and visibility.
Well, you talk a lot about authority marketing. And as you just said, authority is a whole lot very different from just getting attention. So let's go ahead and dive into that. Can you break down exactly what does that mean, authority marketing, and why is it such a total game changer?
Yeah, authority marketing if you really look at it deep, it's increasing your level of trust and credibility with the people that you're doing business with, your sphere of influence, people that like you say, Jay, that you're either raising money from or you're doing business with or things like that. And so the reason it's become such a big deal, and we maybe in the past we called it personal branding or things like that. The reason it's become such a big deal is that the marketplace is crowded. It's extremely difficult to get attention nowadays, and it's even more difficult to really show your expertise because with the onset of AI and influencers on social media, everyone looks like a rock star. And so the only way you can truly separate yourself is to create authority, which is more than just you talking about yourself. And so authority is, in my mind, and back to the days of Dan Kennedy, as well as a few others, it's a strategic blueprint to position yourself as an expert in your field and ideally a celebrity in your niche. Now, people hate it when I say celebrity, but at the end of the day, you really do want to be the most well-known person in your area to your target audience in your niche, and that's being a celebrity. And when you have authority, it helps you to get the speed of trust, to do more business long term, and you don't have to spend your time building credibility if you have authority in the marketplace.
So let's say that we have a listener that, really wants to build their brand, get authority, etc., but they don't have millions of dollars to spend on ads. They don't want to wait, years on building content. What is maybe some of the fastest ways or the fastest way from your experience? What's the fastest way that a personal brand can build authority in today's market without spending millions?
Well, social media is a quick, simple way to do it. And so as far as most of the clients that we have and individuals that we featured, we own about 15 magazines. We own a network of podcasts. And what we found is that creating content doesn't always have to be polished. It doesn't have to be professional. It doesn't have to be in a studio. It's just simply talking about the areas of expertise that you're passionate about and you're excellent at. And you can do that as simple as in social media. But when you apply authority formula and authority patterns and blueprints, you get more out of that content that you're creating. And so it's like anything else. When you do things with specific intent and a blueprint or a strategy, you're going to get more results than if you just do it. But social media is a great way to do that. Networking is a great way to do that. Masterminds are a great way to do that. So there's a lot of ways for you to connect and build your authority. But really, because a lot of people have been featured in magazines or articles or podcasts, it's really what you do with it that really will be the game changer and separator for you.
So this show is called Raising Private Money. We actually have two segments of our audience. A large segment of our audience are real estate investors that are either new or seasoned real estate investors that are looking to raise private money. Of course, you've raised millions. You have equity partners that, invest in your businesses and et cetera. But back to the context of this show, we have two segments of audience. Some people are real estate investors wanting to raise private money. Others are actually individuals that, are sort of interested in being a private lender, being a passive investor. With these two audiences here in the show, tie the bow together for us. How could authority marketing tie in with this topic and this subject matter?
Yeah, one of the things, and I've kind of followed your company for a while, Jay, because you're an authority, right? So it's a great example of that. If you truly build authority like you've done with your company, you not only grow your business, you not only raise more funds, but you start to attract opportunities because people know you're the go-to in the space. Like you're the go-to in the space. And I've been around a lot of speakers and companies and educators and investors. But that's because of the authority that you've built. And so what happens is you not only can grow your business and your opportunities, but you start to attract opportunities. And the third thing is you start to separate yourself from the competition. So if you're out there trying to raise money, or you're doing investing, or you're looking for projects, or you're trying to position yourself in the market, building authority helps you to do that. It helps you to raise money. As you know, for over 30 years now, I've been not just in marketing, but in financial education and the spaces building brands, but also very specifically for real estate investors, asset protection, tax strategies, things like that. And what I've found over the years, when I've been around those organizations like yours, is that people can raise money in a much more sophisticated, higher level, simpler way, especially when you're looking at private money, when people know who you are. And so building authority. And so we've developed a strategy over the last 30 years. We've done everything from millions of pieces of direct mail to digital marketing, to radio, to infomercials, to TV. All of these things are media. But when you wrap it into a strategy, there's really just 4 steps that it boils down to. Most people skip the first step, which is strategy. And just like you teach in your courses and in your masterminds and all the personal clients you have, you've got to have a strategy that works. And the strategy is with authority is to control the narrative. You've got to have a message. You've got to know the market you're going to, and you've got to know where to contact the people that you are trying to get in touch with. When you develop that strategy, that's step 1. Then you can go out and create authority. And that second step of authority is when you can do podcasts and get featured in magazines or get interviewed, and those legacy pieces of content. That's why YouTube videos and podcasts continue to get views over time. That's something that helps you to do that. And then when you apply, and we could talk about that later if you'd like, technology and innovation, and then distribute it through marketing, you can literally drive your authority into the marketplace. So if you're a real estate investor, or you're a lender, and we have a lot of people right now that have gone from decks of info or contact approaches to taking their media that they've been featured in as the point and tip of the spear, so that when they contact people, just like you, just like me, we have podcasts, they know your credibility. And when you establish that credibility, doors open up for you. They just open up, and you start to separate yourself, because everyone can look like a rock star with AI and automation and things like this. But when you have authority media out there, you're going to find that you are the go-to for people out there. And that's like one of the reasons I had reached out to you to get you on my podcast, is because I knew in that market, that's what you was an authority on the topic. And people don't want to just hear about information anymore, Jay. They want to hear about people that are applying the information and that have the history and that have the knowledge. And that's why they go to individuals like yourself that are mentors, or individuals that are authorities in the market.
George, you said something a minute ago that I really want to dive deep into for a moment. And that is, you said the word authority a number of times, and you also said the word trust when you were talking. And that reminded me, the number one reason that private lenders become a private lender for real estate investors is they trust that individual. The reason they don't become a private lender is they don't trust the real estate investor. And so there's a direct connection here with the level of authority that is perceived by the viewer or the listener. And that direct connection is to what, and they're not even thinking. They're not even thinking. They're not even thinking in that word authority in their head. But what they're thinking, and more importantly, what they're feeling. What they're feeling is a level of trust. And so it would seem to me there's a direct correlation in how much authority you have connected to the level of trust that people have with you.
There's no question. In fact, really part of the core definition of authority is that you're building not just your personal brand and not just your marketing, but you're building your trust and credibility in the market. And the interesting thing about that, Jay, is it's interesting to me over the years, because I've seen this happen. Everyone knows, for example, the local real estate commercial guy in their area, or they know that local, real estate agent or lending rep. And if it is because you've seen their signs and you've seen their billboards. And so to make them more applicable for your audience, there's this scientific principle called the mirror effect. The mirror effect, and it's big in politics, is the more often and frequent you see someone or their name or their thing, whether you know them or not, the more you trust them. That's why politicians have signs everywhere, because the more then they go into that voting booth and they're like, oh yeah, that guy. Now they've measured this, and even if they don't know you, now imagine if they do see you on social media, they see you at events, they see you doing deals, but just the simple frequency of being visible can help to increase trust. And you know what that means. When I get in the room with someone now and they know I have podcasts and own magazines and have raised money and have done events and know these guys and those guys, it's not about me telling them my background at all. They just want to know how we can do business together. And so when you go into a situation where you're raising money or you're trying to expand your business and you have authority, you have this speed to trust, like the Covey principle we used to talk about, right? Like you have this, the one big obstacle you usually can't get over by yourself without having experience with them, you can overcome when you have authority.
That totally makes sense. Now, let's bring some practicality to this. So you have been blessed, George, to work with some of the biggest names out there as far as brand awareness. I mean, you've worked with names like Tony Robbins, you've worked with Robert Kiyosaki. Here's the question. What did you learn from watching how they built and marketed their brands?
Well, I learned a lot because I was the one marketing most of them. So that was good. But what I learned is that, look, it starts with having an intention to build a brand. And you do need to have a brand, and you need to look and feel credible. You can't just be, somebody that's like haphazardly going out there in the marketplace. You need to build a brand. But then most of these people had an objective they were trying to accomplish, and they determined what their message, what their objective, and what their course was going to be. And then we use that in the marketing to promote. And what they did is they leaned into their strengths. I mean, this in the real estate space, there's so many areas you can go into. But what I've learned being around these people, in fact, I've been at events with tens of thousands of people, and I could never figure out why some people were successful and others weren't, and how this person, this guru or mentor or mastermind or leader, thought leader, could have such influence. And it's because they played to their strengths, they had a brand, and they had a clear message that they consistently went after. And over time, their authority built. The irony now, Jay, is we can create authority so much faster because of the power of the internet, because of media, and because of technology, that the principles that are time-tested principles, back to Napoleon Hill and Think and Grow Rich, the power of the mastermind, and these things, you can do them in a much shorter period of time if you do it strategically and you do it as a strategy.
Well, let's dive into that. So you and your companies, you own multiple and produce multiple podcasts. You own and produce many, many magazines. Your companies are heavily involved in online media. So let's talk about the media. How can entrepreneurs, or more specifically, how have you and your companies helped entrepreneurs use podcasts, use magazines, use online media to grow their brand and attract, those real opportunities?
Well, we always start with educating individuals on the formula, which we already talked about. It's that 4-step formula. If you get a strategy, you build authority through media, which I'll mention here in a minute. You apply technology, because remember, you can go out there and talk all you want, but if you're not contact capturing and converting leads, you're not making any revenue, you're not doing any sales, and then you got to go out and just promote, and you just got to get out there and you got to do the work. Well, once you know that formula, I always tell my clients, I say, give me an hour a week, I'll put you in front of 1 million people. And they're like, what are you talking about? Because most entrepreneurs are busy. They don't have time. But do you have an hour? Do you have an hour to talk about what you love, or interview people that, are in the topic you love? And so that's the power of podcasting. Podcasting is one of the fastest growing trends, right up there with AI, that people can use, because when you do a show, like, when we do a show like this, we can take that content Now, if you're smart, you're doing it very strategic. And I think people that are your listeners know that you're very strategic about the format of your show and things like this. But if we got together and we riffed on a topic that we love or that we want to be well known in for an hour, we could walk away and my company would come in and say, all right, we're going to take that podcast video and we're going to make a podcast. And if you don't have a podcast, you could speak or guest on podcasts, and we're going to syndicate it to 20 different channels like iHeart and Spotify and Google Play. That's podcast. Then we're going to turn the video into a YouTube video, which is owned by Google. So it's SEO optimized. It's long form, for years and years, it'll get views. And then we'll turn that into a long form blog on our website, which is SEO optimized and keyword optimized, and blogs get searched forever. And then maybe we'll turn that into an article in a magazine. So we like to say, take a core piece of content like a podcast, whether you're speaking on one or you're launching one, and turn it into this legacy content, stuff that keeps growing, which is the podcast, blog, magazine, and YouTube videos. Then you can take that and you can carve it up into snippets, reels, images, posts. One podcast video could turn into hundreds of pieces of content. So we call that our content engine. So if you get the formula down and you put this cadence of content out, your 1 hour can multiply and leverage into hundreds and hundreds of pieces of content that then can be distributed, marketed, turned into ads and everything else. And once you have that down, that strategy of your content engine, which podcasts are great for, magazines are great for, then you can go to another level if you decide you want to get into it with me today, where you can really create a full media company. And when I say that, what I mean is podcasts become one of those things that not only give you content that multiply your efforts, but those podcasts can become a prospecting tool. So this is straight to your audience's need. Have you ever thought about, I want to raise money, I want to do deals, I want to do real estate? There's nothing better than a podcast to go interview the top 10 business investors in the market, or to interview. I've talked to people that I didn't even know, and I told them I wanted to interview them on my podcast, and they're like, sure, because everybody wants to get interviewed, right? Well, not only do you get in front of your ideal potential prospects, lenders, investors, but you also have credibility because you have a podcast, you have authority if you have one. And so what you can do is use that for prospecting. And the beautiful intangible of that 1 hour you spend is you're also in front of their audience. They get shared, the reels go viral, and social media is a whole new animal right now, which we could get into as well. But when you start to build a strategy, that's what it's about. So right now, I've got about 1,200 episodes on my podcast. I do it because I don't sell anything on it, but I just love daily rituals. But at the end of the day, that content over the last 7 years, 1,200 episodes is like 8 million words, now feeds all kinds of content and curriculum, to the point that I get hundreds of requests per month to get interviewed on my podcast. I don't even have to go looking. And I know you get the same, because so many people know who you are now and that kind of thing. So that's just a very specific way to say, when you have a blueprint for authority and you put this like content engine in place, and you don't have to have all that. And there's so many AI tools and automations that will help you do it, that it does not take the time that you would think. But imagine the millions of people that you'll be in front of sharing your message. And that's the real point that I wanted to hammer down, Jay, is if people are out there talking, just to have media, they're not creating hooks. They're not creating a value proposition. They're not creating the need and interest and desire for people to contact you. So it's very important that you do it strategically. I mean, you're a great example of that, because that's one of the reasons I called you to get on my show. So,
well, I appreciate the compliment. You know, I remember the day that I was on your show when we recorded the episode, and when we finished up the episode, I remember you telling me, speaking about creating a show or creating an environment where people are just chasing you, wanting to be on your podcast. I remember you telling me at the end of the show after we were off the air, and you said, Jay, I got right now in my inbox over 300 emails of people wanting to get on my show. So I remember the compliment that you gave me of my staff of breaking through the noise to let George Wright know, who in the world is Jay Conner? Oh, this guy sounds pretty interesting to interview.
Well, and let's be specific. You broke through the noise because you're an authority. You didn't break through the noise just because you kind of like just kept pounding on the door, because a lot of people do. It's when you knocked on the door, and all I did. So what I do, I have people fill out a form now where they got to tell me the size of their business and what they do and their influence, and does it make sense for my audience and all that. But the first thing I did is clicked on a couple of your links, and what did I find? Thousands and time, YouTube, podcasts, videos, clips, social media. You're an authority. So I didn't have to even know you personally at a personal level to say, this is a guy I need to have on my show.
Yeah, that's a big takeaway right there, folks. I hope you were listening. And another thing that you and I talked about after we were off the air, I remember you talking about back in the day that you, or not back in the day, even now, you've just blown up some financial experts brands. And I remember you asking me, well, Jay, who do you use for asset protection? And I mentioned the name Bob Bloom. And then you started laughing. You say, Bob Bloom, my lands. When he was on the speaking tour network, that was, you and Bob were together. So I reached out to Bob after I was on your show, and I said, Bob, guess whose show I was just on? George Wright. And Bob texted me back. He said, oh, wow. When George and I were working together, he was blowing up my brand. He says he was speaking all the time in front of audiences that had more than 10,000 butts and seats.
Yeah, we did some events with 60, 70, 80,000, Trump, Robbins, Kiyosaki. But Bob's a stud, and he is an authority, obviously. But I've traveled many events, many road trips with Bob Bloom. He's an expert there. In another example, if in a niche, in his field, with his topic, he's kind of the go-to, which is obviously why you guys are working together.
Oh, my lands. I promote and endorse Bob Bloom to all my mastermind members and my Platinum Plus clients that are in our coaching program, because there's the word again, authority.
Yeah.
He is the authority from my own experience as to asset protection. I mean, he's got it dialed in. Now, I'm thinking of the word. In fact, let's play a game, George. Let's play a game. I'm thinking of one word, and I'm going to say this one word, and I want you to speak to whatever comes to mind. This is going to be fun. Here it comes.
All right.
Coming from your space of expertise and building authority, here's the one word: competition. What does authority marketing do for someone who is wanting to build their brand? What does it do in relation to their competition? Does it have an effect on their competition, or losing out business to competition?
Yeah, it has a major effect. In fact, that's those three core things I think authority does. Besides growing your business and attracting opportunities, it separates you from your competition. Because let's be honest, it's far more competitive right now because people can learn overnight certain things. And that's why the power is no longer in just the knowledge. It's the knowledge and the connection and association with people that have done it and mentored and things like this. But if you really want to separate yourself from your competition, it can't just be in your strategy. It's got to be in your authority. Because when people nowadays have the ability to research anyone they come in contact with, the first thing they're going to do is look for your credibility. And so having authority helps to separate you from your competition. And then the other thing is you have the ability to add that personal brand through authority, because it is a highly, highly competitive marketplace right now. And yet, the people that have authority, the brands that are really growing, it's not slowing down for them at all. In fact, authority multiplies. And so when it comes to competition, and because of the power of the internet and a lot of the things that you have at your disposal, the tools you have at your disposal now, there's just so much more opportunity out there that the competition will be irrelevant when you build strategy and authority, or you associate yourself with strategy and authority. That's why a lot of people in magazines, you don't have to be Grant Cardone on the cover. You don't have to be Kathy Ireland or Marcus Lemonis from The Profit. But if you're on page 2, page 3, if you're being interviewed on a podcast with someone who is an authority, you can associate alongside authorities and separate yourself from the competition pretty quick.
Is there a way? So I have a principle in all of my marketing that I do in my real estate investing, in my education business, no matter what it is. And here's what I say, and here's what I do my best to practice. And that is, quote unquote, if I can't measure it, I can't improve it. If I can't measure it, I can't improve it. So is there a way to measure the effectiveness of your authority marketing?
Yeah, I think there is. We actually do a scorecard with our clients when we do an authority audit. And what we're doing is we're measuring your visibility with your level of credibility. So it's a quadrant we put you in, because there's a lot of people that have a lot of visibility and no credibility, and their authority is really low. They're just noisemakers. And there's people that have a lot of authority but no visibility, and they're unknown. Part of it, and it depends on your brand and it depends on what you're trying to do, but part of it are the leading indicators, like your social media and your engagement and things like that. But there's so many ways right now for you to manufacture and promote and scale authority that it doesn't just boil down to what connections you have on social media or whatnot. And so at the end of the day, it's a combination. And the thing about authority is there's some intangibles, right? Building your personal brand. So when we do an audit, do you have a voice guide? Do you have a style guide? Do you know what your brand message is? And then we move you into, what are you doing to create consistent content? And then what are you doing to get that content out? And so we have, there's not necessarily like a specific score, but we have a scorecard we keep on clients in these core areas. And I think at the end of the day, so many people are caught up in just social media or just following that they don't stop to make sure that you could have 1 million followers, and if they're not your target market, it really doesn't matter to you. So it's all about measuring the engagement that you have. And then, Jay, as you know, for me, it always boils back down to results, right? Leads, conversions, and sales, or leads, conversions, and dollars raised, or rate of return. That's what it's going to be, your main measurement. And with authority, you should be measuring the overall top line, bottom line.
I'm so glad I asked you that question. Final question, George, for the driven entrepreneur listening to this show who's ready to level up right now, what is the one practical step that they can take right now to start building real authority? I hope you give the answer. I hope you do.
I do. I mean, I honestly think you've just got to be able to get out there and start engaging with the marketplace. That could be guesting on podcasts. It could be launching your podcast, but it's very, very important that you just take a step into the spotlight. Don't be worried about, in fact, the most popular thing out there now is reality TV. Nobody cares if you're polished. You just got to get out and take action, because without the action, you're never going to get anywhere. And I've had so many times I've told people the perfect thing is launch a podcast, or the perfect thing is getting this magazine or this event. But I've realized over the years that it's not any specific one thing stronger than taking the first step. And so that might be getting out on your social media page. It might be getting an interview, but it's getting out in the spotlight, because you need to build the authority if you want to increase your business and not let the market affect you.
George, you've helped so many people, big names and people starting out with really no authority and really wanting to build their brand. And you and your team are experts at doing that. What's the best place to go for the listener of this show that's wanting to find out how you and your team could really start helping them build their own authority marketing?
The best place, the company that I own for authority is authoritymedianetwork.com. So it's authoritymedianetwork.com. And, if you want to touch base with me and connect, always happy to help people. My primary podcast website is dailymastermind.com. And so you're welcome to hit me up there. But Authority Media Network is our authority company. Daily Mastermind's the podcast, and you can hit me up on any social media channel at the Daily Mastermind, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. So yeah, happy to help. Love to be able to help at every level, whether you're starting out, you're a big brand, or you're even legacy and you're scaling, we work with everybody. And at the end of the day, I think it ultimately helps you create a better life. I always say, even on my podcast, I always say, listen, it's never too late to start living the life you're meant to live, or taking the steps you need to make it happen. It's never too late. You just have to start. And so whatever I can do to inspire, motivate, and educate, that's what I'm here for.
These two websites are going to be in the show notes, or I should say are in the show notes. That's www.authoritymedianetwork.com, authoritymedianetwork.com. And the other URL we gave out is www.dailymastermind.com, dailymastermind.com. George, thank you so much for joining me on Raising Private Money.
All right, brother. I appreciate you, man. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yes, I appreciate you, and God bless you. And there you have it, another amazing episode of Raising Private Money. If you found George inspiring, then I need your help to keep having more amazing guests like we had George today. And how is that? Well, you're one conversation away from making a difference. I would love for you to share this episode if it resonated with you. If you found value in this episode, share this episode with just one person that you think this would make an impact on them. We also appreciate the likes and the reviews. And if you happen to be watching on YouTube, be sure and ring that bell so you don't miss out on any other future upcoming episodes. I'm Jay Conner, the Private Money Authority. I look forward to seeing you right here on the next episode of Raising Private Money.
Are you feeling inspired by the knowledge you gained in this episode? Then head over to jconner.com/money guide. That's JCONNER.com/money guide, and download your free guide that shares 7 reasons why private money will skyrocket your real estate investing business right now. Again, that's jconner.com/money guide to get your free guide. We'll see you next time on Raising Private Money with Jay Conner.